Hi, I'm Patrick Paul, CEO and founder of Favro, and this is the Learn from Leaders podcast. The background to this show is that Favro customers are some of the most innovative companies in the world. Enterprises wanting to be more agile, software as a service companies scaling fast, and game developers and publishers wanting to master live ops. So we get to know some truly inspiring leaders in product development, marketing, operations, sales, executive management. And what we do here is that we interview them about leadership so we can all learn from them. Let's go.
And we are live with Matt at NoodleHaus. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about the future of marketing in the game industry. But before we jump into that, I think there's a few other things we need to talk about. We need to talk about the past, but even before that, we need to get to know you a little bit better. For the ones who doesn't already know you, it's kind of a weird thing to say here because there's so many people I know that know you. So I'm guessing that many in the audience they'll be like, yeah, I know Matt. But there are going to be people in the audience that doesn't know you. So I mean, what's the origin story here that led up to today?
Sure. Well, I went to school for advertising and design back in the 90s, and I've always been enthralled with video games and technology and computers and whatnot. But I'd have to say I came to the gaming industry a little late in my career. So I was, established as an advertiser, designer, working with brands and branding, movies, entertainment properties, things like that was kind of where I started. But then I landed at a little company called Activision, and I learned a lot about video games there. And I learned that there's a lot of people who have been making games since they could possibly get a job doing it. And I had a lot of catching up to do. So it was kind of a culture shock. Oh, I love video games. Yeah, I could do this. And then you meet the guy who's been doing it for 25 years longer than you. It's always a fun moment. And so I've been in the industry now for a while, probably, over 20 years. And my focus has always been marketing and creative. I was actually a creative director in a few video games, in 2 video games, but the dev side is something I gained a lot of respect for during those 2 years or 3 years that I did it. And I went back to the marketing side because of, I don't know, opportunities, people that I knew and things like that. And soon after, I founded a couple different agencies. NoodleHaus has been around for 15 years now. That's been my baby, and that's been the most successful venture as far as a creative studio supporting game marketing. That's been just a wonderful ride, and we've been lucky enough to work on some of the biggest titles in the world. So you probably know that we work on Fortnite. We've been their agency since the very first trailer that ever launched Fortnite. And we continue to work with them today, making thousands of videos. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. The industry has changed a bit. We used to make a couple trailers, but now it is literally thousands of videos that need to be made to support a big title like that. So that catches us up to current. Currently, we're doing work in the video space. That's where we focus. Every once in a while, someone will ask us to do a logo or a website or something like that, and we tend to shy away from those as one-offs because we're focused so much on the video deliveries. But as part of a bigger package, we can do that. So
Cool. And I mean, talking about today. I mean, it's also interesting. You mentioned that. You mentioned one customer you have that you've been a very long time with, but if I'm not mistaken, it's actually almost like a bit of a thing with you that you tend to have pretty long relationships with your customers. I guess that's a very good thing, when they come back for more.
well, yeah, I don't think we could make our way without relationships. It's so important, and it also makes it really important that you do good work, that you do what you're going to say when you say you're going to do it, and you deliver. The longest standing client that I have right now just so happens to be sitting in that position, but I have worked with that same manager, that same marketing person through 4 different companies. So as they got promotions or they've got new job offers or they moved from one to the next, they called me back and said, "Hey, now I'm here, now help me over here." So those relationships are absolutely critical, and it's really fun watching people and growing with them, so you could have a manager that started as a junior, right out of college, brand manager, something like that. And, 10 years later, they're, VP or, executive level of a marketing division. And you've been with them the whole time and you have some trust, you have some shorthand you can work with too.
So let's get into, I mean, I would love to hear your take on, kind of the, let's say the delta between if you go back a couple of years and today. So, before we start talking about the future, just kind of, what is, it might actually be easier to talk about, the past, by anchoring it in kind of right now. So, what is the, let's say, the current state of marketing in the game industry? What are the things that works? What are the things that doesn't work? What are the things that make you successful? That you get right. But if you can walk us through all of these things and kind of contrasting it to it used to be, you're like what changed?
Yeah, sure. I think the funniest thing is the thing that scared us the most in the 90s and early 2000s was data. Creatives love to be creative. They love to have a gut feeling and they love to make something really wonderful that makes the whole room laugh out loud. And then you put that out there on on your broadcast television, purchases, purchase ads that way. Back in the day, we used to put our ads in movie theaters. We used to put our ads on our own websites and of course, YouTube. This was before Twitch and before Discord and, all of the social connectivity that we have today. I'd say when data was brought up, oh, we should test this, we should put this this rough cut of this ad in front of a group of gamers who know what they like. And all the creatives would wince. They would, oh God, no, like we don't want to, because we love this, Contrast that with today, we have a live feedback loop almost every second, right? We have so much data, we have so much feedback, we know what's working immediately. And we're still testing the waters because honestly, if someone had a playbook, if someone figured it out, we'd all be doing it the same way, right? But we are still seeing a different approach for a different product every time. So you have a casual mobile game or even a hardcore mobile game, and you create a hugely expensive, wonderfully produced trailer, and it barely lifts your numbers at all because you have that instant read. You know exactly when it airs and how to collect that data. And we didn't used to be able to do that. We used to think this is a great campaign and maybe we'll win some advertising awards. And of course, the game will do well, right? We have found surprising things in the last 5 to 10 years where the best ads barely do anything. That advertising is always good. I'm always going to say that. But sometimes you find a little one-off social asset that you didn't put a lot of attention to, but it was really authentic and it had the right person and the right message. All of a sudden that's popping an extra 5%. And you go, oh my goodness, we could do 20 of these for the cost of the one we just did. And then you try that and you see it notching up again and you realize, oh, that's what my market really responds to. We didn't have those tools back in the day. We would have lots of dollars and lots of media buys and lots of everything pouring into, oh God, like we did outdoor ads. We did vanity websites, for every single game. We would put bus benches and wrap buses and do everything you could possibly do to get your message out there. And nowadays, I think we have this great feedback loop and all the data we ever need and almost like an instant reaction to see that this ad works. And if you want to test it, how difficult is it to make a version of that that's slightly different, maybe a different ending or a different, tagline or something like that. And you can actually see if you can increase it 1% at a time if you want to play in that arena, right? So I think it's hugely advantageous. And it's also possible to run down that rabbit hole so deep that you've found yourself producing thousands of videos again for something and not even know how you got there really. So it's kind of fun.
I'll ask you a tough one. if we go back, 10 years and we would have had this conversation then, and I would, 10 years ago, I would have asked you, hey, what do you think is going to be the future marketing in 10 years? Today, what did you think then? And, I mean, honestly, so you have to be honest. And, what are those things, where you write about, and what are those things where, miss?
Yeah, I'll be 100% honest with you. Um, I was one of the last of my peers that I know of to embrace the influencer culture. And that was probably 10 years ago, right? Where there was just the beginning of homemade content, fan films, things like that, which all had a certain like threat to those of us who have, like we perceive ourselves as we're sitting in this position for a reason. We earn this job, we earn the right to make these, creative decisions and create strategies around what we're going to do. And then these kids, right? They could be amazing filmmakers, but they're doing it on their own dime. They're doing it in their own, streaming room or whatever they had. And it just felt like an infiltration. And so 10 years ago, that was the biggest concern that I had is this where marketing is going? Is it all going to be user generated? Or are we going to have a place in this conversation anymore? Are they taking it away from us? Right. I'm happy to say that we are still hugely part of the conversation. And in fact, bringing influencers in and working directly with them has been a huge success. Of course, with anything, I've always been not against, but I've always been careful about endorsements, athletes, actors, any notable talent that becomes part of your brand. Mostly and only because the liability, you never know who's going to get in trouble. You never know who's going to behave well or who's not going to behave well. And so I always like to try and maintain as much control over our messaging and mature, and a mature brand so that we don't lose something you've seen the scandals, right? So-and-so does one wrong thing on a stream and all of a sudden they're kicked off of their platform. And what if that person was the face of your brand because you put all your money or all your eggs in that basket? So that's the kind of stuff I wasn't afraid of back then. I'm happy to say that we've kind of found a good balance and the content creators and the marketing side of the business, and we are all working together really well.
Let me follow up on that a little bit. It's very interesting. What would be a good, and I'm going to ask. I mean, many, as you know, many favorite customers are really, big studios and publishers. But there's also many venture backed, relatively new studios. And obviously it's going to be limited, resources. So if you want to go this route, there's obviously a limitation to how much of a portfolio you can have with influencers, right? So what would be kind of your advice on a good approach there, with limited resources as a game startup?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I have to start by saying I'm probably not qualified to give you the best answer, but my perception from where I sit, in that the market of content creators has matured, right? And it's no longer an easy phone call to call the influencer or an email directly to the influencer. You usually get to their manager or their agent, and they've become savvy on how much value there really is in the audience that you're asking them for. So we're talking about real money now. We weren't always. We used to do things like, basically you'd get coverage for free. You still do get coverage for free, but there was a little bit more of a Wild West approach to influencers 10 years ago. And if you're going to be spending that kind of money, or if you're going to be laying out a significant part of your marketing budget to get the influencer to mention your brand, play your game or review or anything like that, my advice is make sure they love your game. Make sure that's right for them. Make sure it's the thing that their fans know that they're going to like, because they're going to get sniffed out so quickly if it's an endorsement that's been paid and they don't typically play that kind of game. They don't typically say what they're saying, that kind of thing. So I always look for authenticity and the right match for the right brand. And if you can't find an influencer that loves your kind of game, then maybe that's not the right tactic for your marketing campaign.
So if I can spin on that, if I think a little bit more, generally, the conversation around influencers, there's a lot of talk about, micro influencers or even nano influencers now, and there are various platforms popping up. What's your view on that? In the game industry now, and this is maybe we can start venture a little bit into the future. Where do you think this is going with influencers?
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed our approach to, you know, how much content we should generate, how much content, is on our plate, so to speak, per campaign, and then who can help us generate more and where the audience is. For me, it's always just it has to be an audience and a numbers game. It has to be a personality fit. What I love seeing is when there's a great match, where let's say, I mean, great fit, not a great match, because we're talking about gaming. I don't want to use the word match, but it's a great fit between when it's a great fit between your influencer and your brand, things really click. So if you know that a particular influencer is easily startled but they love horror, and you're making a horror game, beautiful, right? You know that the performance is going to be there. You know that the authenticity is going to be there, and also the audience will fit. So that fit is there. I think I would be leery. I'd be careful with a spray and pray approach of, let's get a bunch of lesser known, let's say 5 to 10 lesser known influencers who might be a good fit, but their audience isn't quite that big, and that kind of stuff. I'd rather find the perfect fit, and use it as a media, like when we used to do like a broadcast television purchase, who's watching, when are they watching, and how much does it cost? And you'd get you get your metrics. You'd understand how much it's going to cost you to reach that audience, and then you'd make that determination at that point. I think with this idea of micro influencers or smaller, wider spread campaigns over a group of influencers, I don't think you're going to be able to measure as easily. You're not going to be able to get the right audience every single time. That's just my opinion.
So let's continue on the path here of the future. So let's do some trend spotting here. Where are things going? What are trends that you see pick up speed now that you think will be stronger in the future? Maybe some novel new things happening that we can do in the future. I mean, obviously I'm gonna have to ask you about AI, but we're getting there. Let's save that for a little bit later in the conversation. But
Sure.
what are some trends that you see are picking up speed?
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I'm an AI. Like, I've been AI this whole interview. It's easier for me to get this stuff done, right? So, I mean, are we really talking to each other? I don't know. So, yeah, the future, like, that's such a funny question. Or it's not funny and weird. We're always looking for that, aren't we? Like, we always want to try and be ahead of it, and kind of have our own crystal ball, be nice. I I think you've got a really interesting dynamic in the whole network of making games, playing games, talking about them, advertising for them. And when I mean talking, it could be anything like a podcast, or or a stream, or even just a Discord server. We have this ability to be connected at all times. We have this unfortunate situation. Well, not unfortunate, but let's go back 15, 20 years ago. You had a game that you thought might get, I don't know, like a 70 Metacritic score or something. It's not going to be a AAA title, but you want to upside it as best possible. So you start crunching the numbers. What if I throw more media at it early, and I get, a lot of people to play it within the first few weeks before everyone talks to their friends? And that's a strategy, right? Because it's going to be a peak and then a drop off, just because of the statistics you're seeing. now we have this instant, always on communication channel with players. And so what we're seeing as marketing is that as market professionals is that we are simply getting to the result faster. And so we need to be ready as game makers and partners of our game makers and studios, as if you're a publisher or if you're a marketing agency or if you're part of the studio and you're the social team, all of that has to be kind of pre-queued up. I think the most success I've seen in the past 5 years has been a game that is ready for the service level that the customers are going to demand. So let's nerf this gun. Let's put new features in. Let's take this thing out because it's breaking the gameplay. Nobody likes X, Y, and Z, so let's tune it up. And so what does that mean? It's a cycle, and it's a complete partnership with everyone, ready to go at any moment, because you're going to find out that you can make a lot of noise. You can turn on your megaphone with your marketing machine and you can get that message out there. You can get the attention of everybody, of every player that you need to get the attention of. They will try it. They will play it. They might drop it right after, or they might stick with it. And you want to try to figure out what you can do immediately to make that sticky factor happen better and better and better. So that success level is always the studios that have the manpower and the plan to constantly drive new content every week and change. Here's another patch. Let's say, we're going to nerf the rocket launcher or whatever we're going to do because, no one likes, I think we were just talking about it yesterday, Dragon's Breath, Dragon's Breath shotgun is overpowered. Let's nerf it, and then message that again. So you start your cycle over again, right? So you can have that conversation within not conversation, but you can have that feedback loop working really well within the organization of marketing and production, and make sure that you're in sync. And that, as the future of gaming, is hugely powerful. The problem with that is it's just going to widen this gap that I keep seeing. You have your AAA titles over here. You have, Spider-Man and Call of Duty and, Assassin's Creed, even the big titles are outspending and outproducing every other wonderfully great title that just, went maybe a little more indie. They didn't get into a big publishing deal or something like that. And so their community is ravenous for more content, but they can't keep up with it. So that's where I think we're going to see a great benefit to some of the big players, but we also might see this gap widening up between the rich and the poor, the indie and the AAA. So I think I'd love to see a way of closing the distance and keeping that machine running.
I mean, that's interesting. I kind of seen the same thing, but from a very different angle, from our angle, organizational productivity, where, going from very, the classic, big monolithic, release, where the relationship, between, making the game and marketing is very, very, linear waterfall, kind of style, versus now it's much more of a cycle and very, very iterative, very, very short iterations, and where it suddenly matters much more that, how does communication between product and marketing, operations, community management, everything. I mean, that whole cycle just spins very, very fast, weekly, even faster. And that puts a lot of strain on how you organize yourself. I mean, I'm obviously blowing our own trumpet a little bit here now, but if you're trying to do that in a very traditional, product management sense, it's not going to work that well. Try to, micromanage the shit out of it, versus if you have a very, well gelled, team collaboration that's able to do this as kind of a, basically this kind of machine that goes, without, it's more of a flow. It's just so much better. I think you just helped me formulate a great sales argument, because I like what you said about that gap. So, when you have a, studio publisher that doesn't have the resources of one of the big, I mean, then you have to make, more with less, to try to close that gap. I mean, that's your road to close that gap. And then you need to look at whatever you can. But to slide out also, it doesn't sound like I'm blowing the favorite trumpet too much here. I mean, another way to achieve that would, of course, be, with the help of AI. what's your what's your take on that right now?
Yeah, that's maybe no preparation at all. I don't really have an opinion or any idea that this topic would even come up. But I'm super excited when new technology is available, and it speeds our abilities, like it enhances our abilities, it gets us to, delivering something quicker. Total offhanded, I took a few photos in one of my last trips, and I like this one photo. It's just on my phone, but I downloaded it and put it into Photoshop, and there was all these extra people in the photo, and I just circled them and told AI to take them out, and it was miraculous. That used to be a lot longer. So I can imagine us speeding the workflow. Being able to do things a little faster, being able to respond a little better to needs. Let's say something needs to be changed, and AI can help us do it. I'm all for it. I think the fear is like everybody's fear is, does it change us so much that it then, um, you know, keeps humans from even entering the workforce anymore? Oh, this particular role has been taken over by AI entirely. Um, or that changes it so much that instead of being an artist, you are a prompt writer or something like that. And I think that is a little scary. I don't think that, I think the jury's still out. I don't think we know where it's going to go or where it's going to lead. I do have a lot of faith in humankind. We're very innovative. We know where opportunities are. There's always somebody who's going to come up with some kind of unique, and lucrative, part of the puzzle that we don't see yet. And, I've played with it, but it's not my expertise.
No, but I mean, what I, if I think a little bit about this myself and, try to put myself into your shoes, I wouldn't expect that, the top expert at utilizing this at a company, would necessarily be you, but I would be thinking that, maybe this is affecting, what kind of people, you are hiring. Maybe it has that effect already now. Maybe this is something that comes up in your team. It's, is that, has it already affected? I mean, you from like a leadership position, has it affected kind of like, how you build your team or how you have to lead your team because, the team are coming to you with all these things they want to do, that you have to have an opinion about.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny, and I think it's more the second part of your question that fits my scenario. The premise of saying I'm going to restaff and I need an AI team. I need a manager. I need some prompt people. I need some programmers or whatever I need to make that happen. Is definitely not my philosophy on on how I bring a team to a project or how I build a team at the company. My philosophy is we hire really smart, really great people, and if they need to learn a new skill, they're going to be able to. So especially in something like this, it fits. If you have the right people at the right place and they're asked to look into something, they're going to tell you pretty quickly, this is doable with the people we have, or we need to hire 3 more people that have this expertise. And I would trust them to do that. So as opposed to like diving headlong into it and creating an AI division, I'm still on the sidelines. I'm still waiting to see where it goes. I do think there's amazing things that we've had, because we're a creative studio, we have a lot of discussions about, well, what if we made something like this? And that has come up with, new campaigns that we're pitching to clients and that kind of stuff where we say, should we, what if there was an idea that AI was perfect for, and what if we could animate, generate an entire animation with AI? And we have samples of that. There's a few, TV shows that have, run title sequences that are all animated with AI and things like that. And then you have artists that I respect and have known for 20 years saying, oh, don't use that crap. Like we can tell every time, like it's just not, it's not quite there yet, but there are some really brilliant artists who are using it to augment and enhance an idea that they had. And that's where I love seeing it. It's like, let's not let the tools force us into a direction. Let's use the tools in the direction we're going. Right. And that's where I want it to be. And of course, I think with anything, as soon as industries bring robots in to assemble and rivet things, and in a manufacturing sense, you tend to lose a few of the jobs along the way. The hope is that those jobs are replaced with higher paid, more specialized technicians that need to manage that stuff. And and then of course there's the utopian dream that we've all heard about and read about in all of the books and science fiction and all that stuff, where, oh, we're so good at this, we don't have to work anymore. We just sit in the ivory tower and sip beverages, and robots do all the work for us. I don't think we're gonna get there either. So
I want to ask a final question, because you kind of came back a little bit to the whole, the relationship, between you and your customer. And what we talked about before with, that kind of, cycle spinning much faster now. How does that affect you? I mean, are you fully embedded typically in that kind of fast spinning cycle, or how is typically your relation? So if you have a live service and things are spinning very, very fast, are you 100% part of that spinning, or are you kind of like a comet, interlooping, that cycle, from time to time? Or how does a relationship like this typically work?
yeah, it's a great question. I'm actually surprised that the answer that came to mind, right, is that when I worked 15 years ago, maybe longer, when we had game studios in like a green light kind of process where they were just showing the early part of the video game, and then the creatives who were managing the marketing and the execution of the marketing would ask, well, can't we just get in there a little earlier? Can't we be there when the character development is happening and the world is being built and the backstory is all right there in front of us? Because we're frustrated because by the time we get our assignment, we have a month or two to make an ad for this thing that launches on a date that's not going to move, and we have to do a lot of catch up and all that. And to be honest, we all would know that that's a blessing and a curse. Like adding more people to the process, more questions, it could slow things down. It could be confusing. I have a great case study I've never written this case study, but it's a story I tell all the time, where we spent months building an ad where the characters were flying across and shooting down and, destroying their enemies. And we were close to the final. We showed it to the studio. And this is all internal, by the way. This is not, but it was just a wonderful moment. We show the ad, and the head producer of on the studio side, kind of raises his hand timidly in this meeting after we show the ad. And he goes, we took the flying part out. So like the whole premise of the marketing plan was fly and kill and all this, and they took it out, but they forgot to tell marketing, or they forgot to tell, everybody else. And so there is kind of a neat idea, like, and we have been embedded, but only because there's so much happening and so frequently that having, we've sent maybe a team of 5 to go and live in, the client's headquarters. They basically lived there. They would report, they had their own badges, and they would come in and out just like a regular workers, just because that at that time, the client didn't have bandwidth. They were full up, and they just needed to produce a lot of content. And so they hired, it was a fast way of adding horsepower to that production engine. I'd say more often than not, I prefer to be just outside the tornado of feature just redesigns and locking down the game, finishing the games, and getting all that done, and trying to level ourselves to a like more of a bird's eye perspective of like, what is the whole promise of this product? Like if you took, like I'm gonna people are gonna laugh at me when you watch this, but let's say it was a Star Wars thing. Okay, so what is the overarching premise of like? Well, it's, I don't know, using your force powers, fighting good against evil, and maybe tipping. You dip yourself and you end up on the dark side. So there's these big overarching themes that can happen in a universe that don't necessarily rely on what color your lightsaber is, right? So that could keep changing in the game design. The costumes and characters could keep changing, and we keep the messaging on point, but we don't need to get into the details. So just to answer your question, we have been embedded because of just the sheer quantity of assets that are required, or the speed. And we also kind of appreciate being one step removed from all of the backstory and conversations about what was almost there and didn't make it versus what actually is there and what the players are going to experience, because they're not going to know all the stories that the developers, and studio knows. They're just going to react to what the final product is. So we're kind of a good, sounding board right at the right moment when you think you're ready to launch your, brief your agencies and bring in, marketing and start launching that effort. Because we will raise our hands and go, well, what do you mean they fly? Like, how does that work? Like, that might be a question that was answered 16 months ago and everybody's totally comfortable with it at the studio, but we need to explain it to players, in a way that they understand. And so that sounding board, I think, is, and just enough distance is perfect. So, yeah.
All right, cool. This has been a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I think it's, just, I have firsthand, from our, customers seeing that, how things are changing with not just, how to, to make games, but also how to market them, and all the various collaborations that happen within that, that is a moving thing that, it is changing, and anything which is changing, I think is quite interesting. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And the audience, see you in the next one.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, you know what to do. Share it in your social media so more people can take part and learn. And one more thing, check out Favro Academy on favro.com for many more learnings. Thanks for tuning in.